Today, I'm interviewing Dr. Nelson Chau, Vice President of Research at a biotechnology company in Massachusetts. From the lively Hong Kong, he moves to a university town in Iowa and experiences a culture shock firsthand. Nelson later finds his way to reputable Johns Hopkins University and discovers his passion in biotech industry, climbing the corporate ladder with his unwavering focus. As you are listening to this episode, I want you to pay special attention to Nelson's attitude. How he, as an immigrant, looks at the challenges he faces and how he solves them. He also shares an important lesson on communicating your thoughts when English is your second language. So grab your cup of tea and join me in this episode of Empowering Conversations. Hello and welcome to the Empowering Conversations podcast, a place to get inspired, challenged, and empowered by stories of immigrants who build their success from zero. I'm your host, Mehran. I just wanted to thank you and appreciate the time that you have given me. And I know you have a very busy schedule, but it's truly an honor to know you and to be interviewing you today, Nelson.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. Happy to help.
Thank you. The first question that I usually ask my guests is, tell me a little bit about their immigration story. Basically, if you could take me to the time that you migrated to US.
Yeah, I'm the only person in my family. Right now I have my wife as well. But when I decided to come to US, I was the only person in my family to coming to US. Maybe I have a cousin in Hawaii, I think, at that time. But mostly it's for education purposes. One of my high school biology teacher basically recommended go to US, and he recommended a school called University of Iowa, which back then I really have no idea where Iowa is, and I don't even know there is a state called Iowa, right? You know, someone from Hong Kong only know about maybe New York, maybe even a little bit about Boston, California, Seattle, but nothing in Midwest. But anyway, one thing led to another. I decided to apply school, and University of Iowa actually accepted me without too much, different tests and different assay and whatnot. So I decided to come.
But you ended up going to Johns Hopkins.
Yeah, so I did my undergrad in Iowa City, and then I was a pharmacy major. In the last year of the school is basically internship, and then interning in hospital, in community pharmacy. It became quickly became very obvious to me that I don't want to be a pharmacist. So I decided to apply for a few different grad schools, went to Hopkins.
So can you tell me a little bit about the challenges that you had?
I guess not a whole lot. I mean, it's the cultural shock, definitely, as from a big city to the middle of nowhere farm country. I mean, the school, Iowa City, it's not a big town, but it's actually a very progressive town. But once you go outside of the cities, you're kind of in the kind of rural area. But I heard a lot of stories from other friends who they went to Midwest for school, sometime potentially facing some unpleasant experience. I try to search deep into my experience. I think most people I met is very nice. Even going outside into the rural area is actually, people are actually very nice. I remember I think the first year, pretty much first year or second year, I spent a week in a farm, tried to experience to be a farmer. I didn't do anything farming, but just experience their life. I mean, the town is very small. There's a few of international students, and we all showed up, I think, on a weekend, Saturday night in a high school gymnasium. We have, dinner or buffet kind of thing. The whole town basically showed up, and, we're all international students. They're all very friendly. So I really don't have much challenges from interacting with people, and I always find that folks from Midwest actually very warm. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't think of anything other than a cultural shock of Sunday afternoon, all the shop is closed, right? Other than that, it's not too bad. A little
Yes.
bit boring.
Yes, I bet. Most of us come from, cities
Yeah,
that are really alive, and,
right, right.
until 12 o'clock at night, people are out and
Yeah,
about.
exactly. But that's exactly the experience I need to try, right? Because I know the very busy life, very city life to a more quiet college town. It's a little bit tough, leaving home, but at the same time, it's actually quite a lot of fun. And then eventually, I grew to like Iowa City a lot. It's hard to leave.
How about language-wise or financial
Yeah.
or?
Yeah. Okay. So language-wise, it's always difficult when you start. It's in a university campus. People understand you come from a country that you don't speak English as your first language. Fortunately, in Hong Kong, we actually has to learn English as we grow up because it was a British colony. So it's a little bit easier for us than for folks from Hong Kong. Financial rise back then is actually not as expensive, believe it or not. I mean, college was okay. And, I owe it to my parents that they decided to, rather than to keep their retirement account, and they used those money to give me a chance to live and learn and go to college in US.
So what would you say was your biggest challenge, if you can say?
I think the biggest challenge is making new friends. As I mentioned, Sunday, right? By 12, everything's noon, 12 noon, not midnight. Everything is closed. And, the first year is really about, the school wasn't very hard the first year, so you really don't have much thing to do. And then you have to make new friends. Fortunately enough that I make a few friends also from the same background. I think it's about 10, 15 of us that came to University of Iowa for college that year, all from Hong Kong. So we kind of stick together and try to learn how to live in a small town. So I don't really have much challenge that
Okay,
I can
that's
remember.
that's great. It also, I think it all depends on the attitudes of people. It's a
Sure,
lot,
that's
in the
absolutely true.
mind, because a
Mhm.
lot of times people have this fear of, okay, what's going to happen? But a lot of it can be in our heads, rather than
Yes.
the reality. A lot of times, people are much more welcoming and open than we think they are.
And I agree with you. It's an attitude, right? There's two ways to look at it. When you're standing in a bus stop and waiting for a bus, and while outside is minus 50 wind chill, you can either say it really is a tough life. I really don't enjoy it. You kind of self pity a little bit, or you kind of stick it out and say, hey, this is something that you have not experienced before, and you can talk about it later. So I think its attitude does take decide how the outcome is sometimes.
Nelson just reminded me of the famous book, Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. Some of us look at the situation and see what we can do about it, while others sit and complain, or as Nelson puts it, they self-pity. Which group do you belong? Especially right now with the coronavirus outbreak, are you a complainer? Or someone who looks at the facts, does everything in their power to break the cycle while staying flexible and agile? You have been a VP of 2 biotech companies, and
Mm-hmm.
I know you're very smart and very pragmatic. I'm just curious, have you ever thought that back then you would be where you are today?
No, not at all. I mean, it's different character. I think there are folks that they know what they wanted to do very young. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Even when I came to US, as I mentioned, even my undergrad was pharmacy. Actually, I started as an engineering degree, engineering school. And turned out, I think the first year was perfectly fine. It wasn't too difficult. But the second year, I still remember to this day vividly walking into the auditorium. There's a class called linear algebra, which is basically matrix, math. So after a whole 50 minutes of lecture, I say, this is not for me. I couldn't do it. So I never planned a whole lot about where I'm going. Maybe I just didn't have that vision. So I think along the way, usually it's one thing led to the other, and then fortunate enough that all my mentors have been very nurturing and I guess watching out for me. I'm not saying that these are all by chance, but you kind of have to prepare yourself. You have to have the right work ethics. You have to do what you like. Otherwise, I think if I force myself to be an engineer, I probably can do it, but it will be very painful. Then that's kind of connected to quote unquote the work ethics. You wouldn't enjoy your work, so you'll be going to work at 8 and then looking forward for lunchtime and looking forward to 5 o'clock, can I leave this place and find something else that I like to do. So I guess you need to find out what you like to do.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that class of linear algebra was a turning point?
Yeah, pretty much. It's not by choice.
But it's great. I mean, you trusted it. You trusted it could have gone on.
Yeah, I think it's just sometimes luck favor the prepared mind, right? So I do believe a lot about luck and opportunity.
Yeah. In general, in your path to be where you are today, what were some sacrifices that you had to make?
To me, it wasn't sacrifice. I really like what I do, so it's not exactly sacrifice. Well, I guess I was just joking with a friend of mine who have like kids, and I said I wouldn't have been able to do what I do right now. I put in that amount of effort and hours and intensity if I have kids. But I didn't want to have kids. I don't want to have kids, so it's actually worked out quite well. So I don't know I have any sacrifices. Maybe the biggest thing is me and my wife is still the only family members in US, right? If I chosen another path, I could have gone back to home and spend time with my aging mom more. I guess that's probably the biggest sacrifice, but it's not exactly a sacrifice, it's a choice. Yeah, I wouldn't characterize it as a sacrifice, but I wish I would have more time to spend with my immediate families.
Yeah. So this was basically a decision, a hard decision that you made. Being here and not having your family close by to spend time with, not necessarily a sacrifice.
Yeah, it's just a fact of life, right? It's a physical distance.
Yes. How many hours do you work? I know that you work a lot and you enjoy working, but how many hours do you work and how do you balance life and work?
So disclaimer, I don't have kids, so it's easier for me. And also I enjoy what I do, so it's easier for me. 12 hours days are pretty normal, maybe the low end, maybe a little bit more. In general, I think many first generation immigrants are like that, if not more. I know of some folks that from China, they come with their kids and the kids are very young, right? And you're talking about grade school, maybe a little bit younger. They work 2 jobs and try to put enough food on the table, put a roof on top of their kids. And they certainly work much harder than I am and I will ever be. And there will be folks that come to US, they have to give up their career at home, which is pretty reasonable career, but they just want to have their kids have a better opportunity, so to speak. Quote unquote better, I'm not sure what that means. How do you define it? And however you define it, they decided US is better, and so they want to come over with their kids. They used to be middle level manager in Hong Kong, and when they come to US, obviously they couldn't do that job anymore. They'd be doing much less skillful work, if you will. I mean, one person, they basically work in a grocery shop and stacking. I'm not saying those are bad jobs. It's something they have to adjust to. For those folks, they certainly work much harder than I do. I actually have it quite easy.
Do you have any specific routine, let's say in the morning or during the day? Because, we hear from different people that they have certain routines, to get them up and be active. Do you have any of those?
No, I think once I get up, I go to work.
That's wonderful. What do you think, in your opinion, is the essential mindset? I'm sensing it, as we're talking, but I want you to you tell the audience, what do you think is the essential skill to be successful?
Mm-hmm. I think I mentioned it before, as you said, it's all about, not all, but a very big part of about your attitude. One could see things in two different angles, at least. I think in Midwest, there's a term called saying, no matter how thin is the pancakes, always two sides. Meaning, quote unquote, bad things happen to a person. It's only one perspective. If you look at from a different perspective, it really quote unquote blessing. You just have to utilize that opportunity and go with it. That's always my experience, is how to you make lemonade of lemon, if you will. Two is you always work hard. I mean, you worked with me before. I work, as hard as I can because someone entrusted me the responsibilities. And you always try to help someone else. You never know. One day they will come back to help you. I think that's one of the saying I actually remember to this day with my grad school advisor, Marie. She always said, it's a very competitive field. And people sometimes worry about saying too much and disclosing too much what they're doing so that, they really don't talk to others. Marie's philosophy is always 95% of people out there actually don't actively try to sabotage your career or try to steal your things. So why not just take the chance? That's my experience. Most people will hear, if you help them, they will try to help you back. Also, you worked with me before, the people definitely will work with me again, and there will people that would never work with me again. You just don't take it personally. You just able to say, I try everything I can. It's just chemistry doesn't mean that person is bad. It just, they're not in the same kind of wavelength, if you will. When you have that kind of mentality, you try to help everyone else, but some people might not get it. And some people feel like not only you're not helping them, but you're actually sabotaging their career. It's actually sometimes it's tough when you hear things like that, but you just have to look back and say, hey, did I try to do that or not? And you have to be honest to yourself. If it's not, then, they can perceive any way they want.
Thank you for all those quotes and amazing ways that you put it. I really love the two sides to the pancake story. This is very
That's the Midwest saying.
And I loved it. And that 95% of the people that are out there, they're not there to get you. And this is something that a lot of us struggle with, and having the courage to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to share is just don't take other people saying a perception about you or the comment about you too seriously. You just have to have a little bit of thick skin. I don't know how and when that I develop a thicker skin. Right? I remember one of my mentors used to say, I'm a Teflon. I said, what do you mean? He said, no matter what I throw at you at time, sometimes say bad things about you just in the stick. I say, yeah, well, I have enough friends tell me I'm not that bad. So then you just have to move on and forget about their comment.
Yes. And I love the story of Teflon again, another visual.
Yeah. You just have to be a little bit more thick-skinned and don't dwell on other people's comment. Both good or bad, to be honest. Right? You can't keep dwelling on people telling you you're the greatest person in the world. Move on. Usually you don't learn a whole lot from success. You learn a whole lot from failure.
Growing in a competitive environment as a minority, we know that there are challenges. What would you say are the challenges, and how did you overcome them?
I think the language barrier is difficult when you have 10 people debating a piece of paper. The way I not exactly overcome, but at least try to compensate a little bit is I always tell them, you can't ask me for my opinion and expect me to give you a comment or educated comment, a thoughtful comment in the same day or same sentence or same meeting, right? Give me some time and I'll go home and think about it and take my couple hours, think about it, and give you a detailed report, if you will. Because a lot of time I probably have the thoughts, I just don't know how to communicate it. Partially, I'm not very good in communicating. Partially, I am not it's a language barrier of a minority or foreigner or immigrant. Fortunately, I keep saying that's why I cannot be an ER doc, because people will die. Fortunately, the career that I chose, 99.99% of the time, I don't have to be someone can respond very eloquently. I mean, of course, when you go out and talk to investor and folks like that, definitely need to able to be projecting and confident and stuff. But that's all about preparation, right? If you understand your work, and then if you give time to think about and prepare of what kind of questions that you get from different people, then you really don't need to start to think on your feet, so to speak. That's probably the biggest challenge, able to turn around and answer very quickly.
Yeah, so accept that there are certain challenges that we have, and communicating our thoughts sometimes immediately, spontaneously in 30 seconds or less can be a challenge.
Not going to happen to me.
Yeah. But we try our best to prepare for it.
Yep.
And then if we cannot come up with an answer, we can always buy time. So we don't have to be spontaneous and act like we know. We can always buy time, go back.
Yeah, I think the people who really asking about question and care about the answer really appreciate it, more thoughtful rather than spontaneous. There's only a very few percentage of people can have a very spontaneous response with a lot of thoughtfulness to it. I know of very few people can do that.
Do you feel accent is important or not?
British accent is definitely important. Just kidding. No, I don't know. To me, it's not important.
How many of you limit yourself because of your accent? Now, I understand that some of us have a thick accent, which makes it hard to understand. But unless your manager, your colleague, your friends have difficulty understanding you, don't hold back. Share yourself, but gradually work on your accent. One of the tips I shared on my Instagram some time ago was, your English accent is not holding you back from success. It's the relationships you don't develop because of it.
What is your dream?
If I could be part of any drugs that eventually get into patient and help them, that would be very, very rewarding and satisfying. I'm a very quote unquote boring person. I don't have a whole lot.
Always say that.
I don't have a whole lot of interest. You can say I'm very focused, but you can also say it's pretty pathetic. I don't have anything that I like to do.
I like to go with the first. I always thought of you as very focused and very direct, as what you want and what you are looking for to see. And I always appreciated that when we were the same company.
Yeah, I think I'm just fortunate for you that I think eventually I know what I wanted to do. And not in college, but I think even in grad school it was just fun, right? It's learning new stuff from my mentors, also from my classmates. These guys are all very smart. I still remember the first year was defeating at time because pharmacy wasn't a really basic biology degree, so there's a lot of things I didn't learn. I went to classes and basically you can hear people like debating with these world famous scientists about, this experiment, that experiment. By the third slide, they lost me. Like, okay, whatever. Even in grad school, I don't know what I wanted to do until I think once I get to biotech and see that there's a chance that we can leave, at least I can leave my legacy of somehow helping people that are in great suffering. I think that's a little bit of calling, I suppose.
You mentioned a few times the name of mentors.
Yeah.
What were the role of the mentors for you?
A lot of my mentors are not necessarily hands-on, since grad school, but you can see they are genuinely try to help me. To this day, I still have a lot of different mentors, and you learn different aspects of things from them and what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. What type of people do you surround yourself with?
Fun, have the similar mind in a sense, not the same way to do things, but at least similar minds. And because again, to be successful, you need different skill set, different type of personality, and just have to have a common goal in terms of working. Right? Friends, you don't have to have common goals.
So a lot of us immigrants say we are starting from zero, which a lot of us do, in one sense or the other.
Sure.
If you could go back to that time, what advice would you give yourself to make your life a little easier?
I can see folks that come over to US and they have, a family to take care of younger kids, or they just marry, have a very younger kids. So I can see they're under much more pressure than I was. I mean, again, fortunate enough that my parent wasn't making a lot of money, but they were very committed for my education. I think maybe have an attitude and don't look back and don't compare what I could have. I maybe in Hong Kong, when I graduated from high school, I actually was given a chance to go to a college in Hong Kong. So that would have been probably an easier life per se, because it's a very simple, just transitioning, and I would have all my friends very close to me, and I'm still living with my parents. So there's a lot of things you don't have to do, and you don't have to overcome when you have to be the other side of the globe and be yourself. When the times are tough, if you start to think about, oh, what if? And what if I didn't do it? What if I stay home and don't have to come over in this, small town like this? It's one I don't think is helpful. Will be, I think, self-defeating. You kind of have to not look back and never what if. Maybe the other thing is, it's about finding friends from the same background, same culture. Even though I have a lot of friends that are not from Hong Kong, but I do feel like when times get tough, the friends who understand you the most is probably from the same background, so that they certainly identify with you and your challenges. So finding that very tight-knit social support group is absolutely important.
Was there something in your culture that you grew up with, but not necessarily served you once you moved here, that you kind of had to unlearn it?
Actually, funny question. The other day I heard someone say that I'm more American than a Chinese. It's actually maybe true. I mean, Chinese cultures are a little bit more top-down and more hierarchical. And I don't know when I become less and less hierarchical. I mean, anyone can come to talk to me, at work. I don't know if you remember, I always say in a discussion, no one should pull rank, but someone eventually need to make a call, and that someone also will eventually be responsible for and accountable for that call. But I like discussion, I like debate, which is very different from from the Chinese culture. Maybe that's the reason someone say I'm less Chinese, more American, if you will.
If you were to give an advice to our next generation, Generation X, Y, Z, millennials, what would be one advice?
I see people communicate sitting right next to each other by text, and it's kind of strange. But, at the same time, because of that skill set, they can use that electronic devices to communicate with the coworker thousands of miles away. And that's probably enabled them to work from home instead of they have to be in office. I think different generation have their own way to utilize their skill set to enable to change their workplace. Just what I said, right? If you don't text very well, you don't email very well, and you don't practice this, and then you get stuck as you have to work in the office. But these days, there's so many people actually work from home.
Yes. That is very true.
Oh yeah, one thing I would suggest. It seems like the instant gratification thing that might need a little bit of perspective. My first lab job was just washing dishes for half a year. Here, I mean, sometimes the newer generation, maybe it's just time in such a compressed scale. 2 weeks after they join the lab, they want to run the whole experiment themselves. Maybe not a good idea. There's a book called Outlier. Basically say, in order to be an expert of anything, you need to spend 10,000 hours.
Yes, I love that quote, and I keep reminding myself and everyone around me the 10,000, magic number.
It's actually very, very true.
And it builds up, right? I mean, you need years and years depending on how long you are actively focusing on that skill set.
Right. And I think along the way, you don't complain too much and don't worry about you being taken advantage of, so to speak. We interview a lot of newer generation XYZ team members, whatnot. That's one thing I keep telling them, don't worry too much about why am I working 7 hours and this person only worked 5? Why am I working on a more complicated assay than the other person? Just put your head down and keep working at it, as actually will be noticed. And that's my experience. And don't worry about calculating every single moment. Why am I not getting the best out of everything? Because you can't. Ultimately, you can't be getting all the advantage and everyone else getting the disadvantage.
And sometimes I feel it could be the lack of joy in what they are doing, right?
True.
And if they're not enjoying it, they're spending their time counting the hours rather than just doing it and learning from it.
Yeah, you probably heard me say before, you have to like what you do.
Yes. So many times it's I actually have that question as next, but I know the answer to it. It's passion or money.
Yeah, passion. I mean, don't get me wrong, money is important. I think you have to have basic needs, and I'm fortunate enough that, biotech pay reasonably well. If there's another job, say investment banker, I'm just picking on them because I'm never able to do it. They all obviously make much more, but, there's a certain level, if I have to, starting from 9 o'clock, start counting how many minutes I need to work until I get to my lunchtime, I'm not sure it's worth it.
Yes.
But I do appreciate some folks, as I mentioned, right? They come to US and as a first generation have a lot of financial pressure that they have to taking care of the kids. They might not be as fortunate as I am and you are, that able to do what we like. They have to do something they really don't like. And I have a whole lot of respect for those guys.
Yes.
And
I think it goes back to that patience, right? I mean, not all of us had straight line to where we are today. And to be fortunate to be doing what we are also passionate about. We had to do a lot of things that we were not passionate about, or we didn't necessarily enjoy them at the moment.
Sure. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
I truly learned a lot more about you and quite enjoyed our conversation.
Good. Me too. Cool. Let me know what else I can do to help.
Thank you.
Today, you listened to Nelson's story of migration and the essential mindset that led to his success. I highly recommend this episode to those who are in the early stages of their career. Who comes to your mind? Perhaps a family member, friend, coworker? Feel free to share this episode to an immigrant with a big dream but limited resources. But before that, make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss another success story of an immigrant. Next week, I have a surprise guest for you. So stay tuned. And as always, thank you for listening and your support for this podcast. You, my audience, mean the world to me, and I hope to see you in the next episode of Empowering Conversations.